bringing some eggs with them, or tins of paint, or any of that kind of material, please leave them at home. We will not associate ourselves with any of those kind of acts, or any placards, or any calls for resignations. It's a peaceful march, and we'll hand in a petition. I'll tell you what's in the petition in a bit, and thank you, John. Some of the other kind of areas that we will be focusing on in the coming months, we're going to have a conference. The conference on Tuesday in Maynooth is primarily about Catholic education and winning back our schools with a good solid ethos and formation of children. That's an uphill battle, as many of you realise, but we have to start somewhere. Bishop Fonsi here, actually, I met him at the Divine Mercy Conference, and I think he's a good bishop. Maybe he's a little bit too cautious for some of us, and we'd like to see him kind of go over the trenches, leading his men into battle. But at least he has the right ideas, and so we can go over the trenches, and he can kind of be in the planning room, and hopefully he'll be supporting us, and he won't fire any bullets at us as we're kind of charging at the enemy. But I think he's one of the better ones. So it's good news that you have Bishop Fonsi down here in Waterford. Also in the west of Ireland, Bishop Kevin Doran, again, a little bit quiet and shy for some of us, but at least he has the right mind and he thinks right. And really what our job is to do is to give them some courage, because all of these bishops are a little bit like the rabbit caught in the headlights. They've been kind of battered by the media over the years, and so they don't want to, and everybody, we all want to be liked, we all want to be popular, we don't want to be we don't want to kind of go out there and just have tons of abuse hurled at us. And when you think of it, all the bishops have done over the past 10 years, he's had all that abuse thrown at them, and so they're a little bit kind of shy. Now some might say, I'm not saying this, but some might say if they're not ready for the battle, they should kind of move on and make way for men who are ready for the battle. But if that's not going to happen, we should kind of lead the battle for them and lead them into the battle. The other thing is, all of these kind of attacks they have one common source, and it's the source that Our Lady warned us about in Fatima, the errors of Russia, communism, Marxism, socialism, liberalism. It's always been the same ever since every revolution in history, going back to the French Revolution. And there is a thing as just anger, but we'll be very calm, because we'll have been edified by the Rosary. John's smiling because he doesn't think we can remain calm, but we will, because we'll have been edified by Our Lady in the Rosary. And so when the bishops come out for their lunch and walk past us, hopefully they will, they might decide they're going to have sandwiches brought in, and then we might not get that usual parade out. Who knows what will happen. But we'll just smile at them, and we'll be respectful, and they'll see that we're kind of nice, normal people who really just want them to be Catholic bishops. That's all we want. We don't want them to be anything else. We're not asking them to become, World War II generals and follow. We don't want General Patton running the bishops' conference. We just want our bishops to be simply Catholic and be the shepherds. And I think it was Fulton Sheen who said, there's one thing worse than a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that's a shepherd in wolf's clothing. So, we want them to take off this wolf's clothing that some of them have. And so we're going to hand in a petition. It'll have 10 points. We'll put it in the next issue of Catholic Voice, so you'll be able to, and it'll be up on the website. And briefly, the 10 points are, and then we can have a discussion about, and you might have some ideas yourself, and it's not too late to add them into the petition if they're, if they're good ideas. John, is it John? It's not too late. It's never too late. So, and these are in no particular order. So number one is, and it'll be all dressed up. It won't just be kind of written on a scrap of paper like this. It'll be kind of presented in kind of grown-up writing and with a nice introduction, won't it? But so number one, reform schools so that our schools become Catholic again. So there's none of this nonsense where the kids come home and you say, oh, what did you do today, Billy? Oh, we had a yoga session, because some of the children were getting a bit agitated. So the teacher thought we needed a safe space, and she decided that we'd have some yoga meditation. And now I've turned into a little snowflake, and you're going to have to cancel your subscription to Catholic Voice because it's an evil, nasty thing, and we should all be living with our fellow men. We don't want our children to be like that. So we want them schools to reform. We don't want any LGBT ideology in the schools. These kind of rainbow flags in Catholic schools. Who would have thought that 5 years ago we would even be discussing this? I've lived in Ireland now for 20 years, and I mean, when I first came here, I never thought that we would have to say, I used to, the thing I used to be kind of riled about is, the principal's a sister and she's not in a habit. That was it was as simple as that. Why isn't sister wearing a habit? She should be if she's the principal. What's going on here? But now, I never thought, even at that time, that we'd be talking about this LGBT ideology. It's just come on us like a storm overnight. And so we have to demand that our schools are reformed and become Catholic again. The second thing is, the Vatican Summit on Abuse was very good. Let's not take anything away from that. It was needed. But we also need our bishops to recognise that there is more than one form of abuse. Rightly concentrated on the abuse of minors. But there is also the majority of the abuse carried out by people like Cardinal McCarrick is on young adult men in seminaries. And we need to protect those men in our seminaries. And we need to have the church own up to the problem, so that when you send a son or daughter into a religious house of formation, you know that they're safe from these kind of predatory adults who use psychological kind of mind-bending techniques to pervert them. And it really is the most evil form of abuse that I have encountered. And sadly, it happens in our seminaries in the West. And we have to finish it, and we have to have the Vatican own up to this and clean the system out. With that, then, the third point is we're going to ask for the seminary in Maynooth to be closed and kind of put on ice, because let's face it, the seminary now only has a handful of men. All the young men with vocations I talk to are going to study outside of Ireland, or they're going to the Dominicans. And that sadly means that the people who are going to Maynooth are, either it's the last resort for them, or they're not really good candidates for the priesthood. And how can they be when that seminary has been suffered so much scandal? So the easiest thing to do would be to close it for a time, and for individual bishops to open up seminaries in their own diocese. So Bishop Fonsi could begin a seminary here in Waterford. And this happens in England. It's not kind of new. Bishop Mark Davis in Shrewsbury, Bishop Philip Egan in Plymouth, they have many vocations. The Institute of Christ the King, their seminary is full. I've visited it and been there, and it is full to the rafters. They're building extra spaces. The Fraternity of St. Peter, all of these traditional seminaries is where our young people should go until the Irish bishops have a team of people that can come in to the seminary in Maynooth and reform it in a Catholic way. And then following on from that point, and the Pope Francis himself said this, so I'm agreeing with Pope Francis and echoing his words. He said that homosexuals are not suitable for the priesthood. And if it's good enough for Pope Francis, it should be good enough for our bishops here in Ireland. And all they can simply say is, that same-sex attracted men are not suitable candidates for the priesthood. It's there in many of the Vatican documents, and as I say, Pope Francis have said it, so we'll be saying that to them. The fifth point is we need our bishops to kind of, and we'll have the backbone transplants with us, so we can give them a bit of backbone to do this. I don't think we'll have that machine at the procession, will we? But we're kind of building it in our laboratory to kind of give them some backbone, and it will be that they have to correct clergy that dissent from the church teaching. So when a priest stands up in a Sunday Mass and uses the homily to say, it's all changed now and it's okay for Johnny and Bill to get married, and I can't give them a blessing at the moment because the church is so outdated, but hopefully in a few years I'll be able to. But here they are in the congregation, give them a round of applause and let's apologise for all the kind of the way the church has made them suffer over the years, as happens in some churches. Or when you have a priest in Dublin standing up and saying, I'm going to be voting yes in the same-sex marriage referendum, I encourage everybody else here to do it. We need the bishop to say this is wrong, and I'm sorry, but we are short of priests, but he's going off on sabbatical. And until he comes back and can guarantee to me that he'll teach the church teaching, then he should be. Secondly, it shouldn't just stop at priests. We should have the Archbishop of Dublin should publicly correct Josepha Madigan. Instead of inviting her to Mass on the 1st of January, the very day in which the abortion referendum that she championed and pushed through and is now pursuing with demonic delight, he should be correcting her. He shouldn't be inviting her to Mass and saying, I'm now friends with Josepha, and she's a good lady. Little wonder we struggle to get a letter of good standing from him when his kind of collaborators and fellow travellers are people like Miss Madigan. And look at the kind of way in which Madigan and the other lady, O'Connell, is she, the Fine Gael, are just, are pursuing this with just, it's like they've taken over the sweet shop. It's perverse the way they're carrying on. And we were told all along that this would be one of the most restrictive regimes, and don't worry about voting yes because it'd be really restrictive. And now they're just, making it one of the most open, one of the most liberal in Europe, and our bishops are remaining silent. It's just not good enough. And then for the Archbishop of Dublin, when good, brave men and women are standing outside those abortion mills trying to save young women from the horror of abortion, then he kicks the boot into them as well and says they shouldn't be protesting, and he wouldn't, if it was him, he wouldn't save babies in car parks. They should be a mile away from the thing. I mean, this is just scandalous. And we have to say to our bishops, we can't tolerate this anymore, and if you're not speaking out, we will be. Sixthly, and I'll just go through these quickly now, then we can have questions and answers. We need a proper, authentic marriage preparation course for our young families. None of this kind of, neoliberal nonsense that the young people are exposed to these days. And following on from that, we need the bishops to close Accord. Accord is the marriage guidance council for the bishops' conference. However, like Judas was bribed with 30 pieces of silver, I think with inflation, 30 pieces of silver has now become millions of euros. I think how much funding do Accord get? They get a few million. I think it could be over 10 million, but I could be wrong. But it's certainly in the millions. So in order for that 30 pieces of silver, Accord, the Catholic agency for marriage guidance, have now agreed to counsel same-sex couples. So it's almost as if the church is saying, well, we'll take your money and we'll just ignore our own teaching. I mean, it's scandalous. And so if they can't stand up to these politicians and these bullies and thugs in Leinster House, then they should close Accord down. And I'm quite sure that good, faithful Catholics would fund an alternative to that, a private agency that could counsel Catholics in need of help. In a similar vein, point number 8 is, we will ask the bishops closed down the Cora crisis pregnancy counselling service, yet the website is still up there. So the Cora website's up there and it simply says we've closed down. If you need information, follow these links. And it's all links into the pro-abortion counselling services by Positive Options. So they need to take down the Cora website and they need to establish a directive pregnancy counselling service that will direct young women who go to it and help them not to go through with the abortion. It needs to be directive counselling. There's no positive option. There's no choice. Having an abortion is not a positive option. And so we need to kind of understand where the young woman is and try and help her and sustain her through that pregnancy and give her the help and support post-pregnancy. And they need to establish, and if they don't have the courage to do that, then they should give the money that they're using for Cora, or give some fund and give it to Ask Magella, and say we'll ask Magella $500,000. Here it is, and here's a donation. Extend your services if they don't want to do it themselves. Number 9, Catholic hospitals. Now again, when I first came here, I didn't think we'd ever have to be saying this to our bishops. But Catholic hospitals, with a Catholic ethos, it's very simple, very black and white, should not be performing abortions. And if they are forced to perform abortions, then the bishop, the early bishops, let's look at a few of the early bishops and a few of the early apostles. St. Paul, what happened to him? St. Peter, what happened to him? St. Thomas, what happened to the majority of the apostles? Or the early martyrs when they were, What about, for example, the Christians in Syria, the priests in Syria, who say Mass every Sunday and don't know it's a 50-50 chance whether they're going to get a bullet through their head? It's as simple as that. Or the Chinese Catholic bishops who are beaten up by the Communist Party now, empowered by this new deal that the Vatican have done with them. And so any of the underground bishops are dragged in the streets and tormented. So if our bishops, are given a fine or a slap on the wrist in the magistrate's court, or they're given a suspended sentence, far better to get a suspended sentence for that than some of the suspended sentences we've seen for clergy like of the likes of McCarrick, a far nobler cause to challenge the status quo and to protect children. And if they're not prepared to do that, then what they can do is remove the Catholic patronage from the hospitals and resign from those hospitals, and so that there is no kind of shadow of a doubt that they are Catholic. And then the final thing that we'll be asking for, and perhaps the most difficult for them for very obvious reasons, and the most urgently needed, is we need financial transparency from the bishops, from their accounts, because it's very clear that people like Maciel, people like McCarrick, people like Rembert Weakland, the former Archbishop of Milwaukee, who paid a young man $450,000 over a period of time to keep him quiet. You know, we need those books wide open, and we need to be able to follow the money, and we need to say, you know, and if the bishops have nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about. You know, they should appoint an independent auditor to go in there and look at the books, and if there's, you know, tens of thousands of pounds going to some strange kind of bank account, then you know, questions need to be asked, and the bishop may have to resign. But you know, let's be under no doubts, our church has been infiltrated. It's been infiltrated now for a very, very long time, and these people who have kind of remained quiet for many years are now becoming more vocal, because they're becoming more confident, because they think they're in control. And so we, as Fulton Sheen kind of famously said, you know, it will not be the bishops or the clerics that reform the church, it will be the lay people, and it really is down to us. And so that's the petition we're going to hand in. We're going to be nice and happy, we're going to be smiling, it's going to be a joyful day, and it's going to be a long, hard slog. But we'll have Our Lady with us. You know, we know that we're doing the right thing. We're all fallen men ourselves, so we'll all make mistakes. We're bound to. You know, none of us here are perfect. But we just have to answer this call, and we have to try and fix our broken culture, if not for our sake, then for the sake of our grandchildren and their children. So thank you for listening, and we'll kind of open it up to questions.
Just one point on the financial transparency. What you're looking for there is, if a priest has done something he shouldn't have done, and a financial settlement has been made to keep him quiet, we don't necessarily need to know the priest's name. We need to know that he's out of ministry. Or if it's a case of the bishop needs to either resign, and if he doesn't resign, then the details need to be published. That's how McCarrick got away for so long. They paid off the victims, and so we just need to find out. And again, those transactions can be easily spotted. If suddenly there's a lay person and there's 20,000, 30,000 a month going in for a year, you suddenly say, hold on a minute, what are you paying this for?
So any questions? No, you've got a question.
Add the removal of crosses from hospitals to the petition.
Yes, well, we can add that to the Catholic hospitals.
Yeah.
It can't be the removal of crosses. Yes.
My own belief on that is I think that's a smokescreen. I'm not 100% certain yet, because I haven't had a chance to read everything that's in that, but I have a feeling that it's just too convenient that comes up, and that Leo Varadkar is saying, oh, well, it's not just about removing the Catholic things and all that. I reckon there's something else in the bill that's
something to divert.
Yeah, it's diverting attention from something else that's in that bill, but I haven't had a chance to go through it yet. I hope we'll go in there.
Incidentally, it's not all bad news, because there is some good news from Hungary. You know, that Mr. Orban, who is probably the best leader at the moment in Europe, and the opposition there is even better. but they're paying young families now €60,000 to have children and to stay at home and look after them, and that's the kind of policy we should be having.